Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back. Today I'm going to show you how to make your lacquer dry faster. So what we're going to be lacquering today, we're going to get a nice gloss finish on this Telecaster. In a recent video I showed you guys how to do this two-tone dye job. I say two-tone because there are two different dyes involved in getting this particular finish, and I showed a completely different method to do this different type of finish on the back. Both kind of interesting, one looking a little more distressed than the other, but in any event, today we're going to go ahead and gloss this guy up with some lacquer. Now, one common complaint with lacquer finishes is that they take forever to dry. We're talking a month, 6 weeks, stuff like that. So people often have to put their lacquer on, wait a day, put another coat, wait a day, put another coat, and then wait a month before they can go in and polish it. That's a pretty long process. Now, as many of you know, one of the ways around that is to get a catalyzed finish. Catalyzed finishes cure rather than just drying, and they tend to do so quickly because they have a catalyst. The problem with those is, of course, you have to mix them. They're two-part. If you do get a two-part finish in a can like that, you have to break the can within the can, like you do on a 2K Spray Max Clear, for example. Gives you a beautiful finish, but it's got a shelf life, a fairly short one once you do that. A couple days generally, and then that can is done, so you need to be able to use it all at once. There is a third option though. What I have here is Bellin's Precat lacquer. Precat meaning pre-catalyzed. This stuff is catalyzed in the can. There's no can within there. It's simply got a catalyst in it, and because it's sealed up, it stays good for a long time. Aside from that, it's a lot like normal lacquer, so I have to shake it up. It's in a can. I'm going to do this for about a minute. And then I also have to protect myself the way I would with any other lacquer. And this is a key thing to consider. Because I don't want you guys to die. So make sure that you're protecting yourself properly. If you don't have a mask, I've said this before, check out the link in the description, the Amazon link there, and get yourself one. I highly recommend for something like this because it's catalyzed and dries faster and thus is even more dangerous than normal lacquer. I highly recommend the full face mask if you can get one. It's in the description. If you are only doing this like once and you're not so concerned, get the half mask, go to Home Depot, do something, get yourself a respirator. It's very important that you protect yourself. I also recommend that you wear gloves. And on that note, the Precat lacquer should also be available in the description, assuming that I can find it. So I'm gonna get this shaken up, throw some gloves on, get this guy put on my guitar stand. If you don't know how to make a guitar stand and you want to, I've got a video about that somewhere too. I'm gonna mask up and we are gonna spray some of this. The spray technique is exactly the same as you're accustomed to from watching me spray lacquer. The difference being that this stuff can be sanded in about half an hour. That's right, half an hour. Okay, let's get to it. So just like with any other paint, you want to make sure you give this stuff a good shake. Once you hear that ball rolling around in the center, you want to give it at least a minute after that of shaking, of agitation, before you go ahead and spray to make sure those solids and pigments in there get mixed in nicely with the propellant and the solvent and they spray out properly. As many of you likely know by now, I always start with the edges when I'm doing something like this on a guitar because I want the overspray to go onto the faces. The faces are the most important part and the area that gets all the polishing work and stuff. It's not that hard to get a nice look on the edge. So I start with the edge because the overspray ends up on the face and then the overspray gets covered as I go in and coat the face. You can see the way that I'm doing this linearly. You've probably seen me do this before if you watch my channel, but I go back and forth in nice even strokes and overlap my previous stroke by about 50% every time if I can, which means that if I'm putting out about a, for example, 3-inch pattern on the paint, then I'm going to move down 1.5 inches for my next stroke, which is the same example that I used in my video on how to get an even coat of paint with spray cans. It's an old video, but if you're struggling at all with that, I recommend that you check it out. I think it'll be helpful for you. Now, when I get into the curved areas here, I simply do the one side and then the other, and come in and handle the carve afterward. In my previous video, of course, I showed you the techniques that I used to get these finishes, so I've got my kind of more modeled random effect on the back, and of course my sandbag technique on the front that allowed me to get this particular dye job. So of course have a look at that if you're interested in how I did the dye work to get the guitar to this stage before spraying. Now, a sealer would be a good way to start on bare wood like this. I've jumped straight into the lacquer itself, a nice gloss lacquer, because this is a fairly tight grained wood, reasonably tight grained, and I shouldn't need too many coats to build up the finish that I'm looking for here. I want to keep it relatively thin overall. That being said, there is of course a catalyzed sealer that you can use before this that allows you to seal up the wood more quickly so that you don't need as many coats of the lacquer itself. It's a good idea, particularly when you're doing raw wood like this. I just don't happen to have any at the moment, and like I said, I'm trying to keep this finish thin, so this technique is going to work just fine for me. Now this stuff does, of course, as I said, dry faster than standard lacquer. Sandable within half an hour. I would still, to be on the very safe side, give it about a week or at least a couple days before I go to sand and polish it. I'll probably give it a week because as far as lacquer standards go, that's very, very quick. As I said before, about a month is more typical for example, a nitrocellulose lacquer, and at least that for an acrylic lacquer generally as well, sometimes up to 6 weeks. So being able to go in, sand, and polish after a week, which I've done with this product once or twice before, is a huge benefit if you're on a timeline, and it really allows you to kind of get that workflow going quicker. And frankly, I think you can probably do it even sooner than that. That is just what I employ as kind of my safe technique. Now you can see here that I've kind of changed up my angle. I'm spraying at a diagonal kind of 45-degree across the guitar now. That's just to kind of mix up the spray pattern a little bit because I don't have a fan cap, of course, on this can. So this allows me to further ensure that I'm getting a nice even coat that's going to be easy to deal with and easy to polish after. So keep that in mind when you're working with spray cans, that changing your angles up in your coats like this can be a nice way to get a good even coat. And whether it's 45 degrees or 90, this is a good way to get things to lay out like this and not have to worry about excess overlap from following the same pattern over and over again.
So that's it, guys. That's the Precat lacquer. If you're spraying raw wood, you should probably get the Precat sealer as well. Throw that on there first and then move on to this stuff, and you'll find that it dries to the point where you can polish it a lot earlier than otherwise. So that is the trick for making your lacquer dry faster. You catalyze it, or you get yourself a pre-catalyzed lacquer like this in a spray can. Super easy to use. As you can see, it sprays out really nicely, and it's going to give us a beautiful gloss finish when all said and done. We will come in and polish this in another video, so stick around, stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe. We're going to do that soon. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to give it a thumbs up so that other people are more likely to find it, because YouTube recommends stuff like that. And thanks for watching. Have a good one. I'll see you next time.